From March 28, 2025 to March 30th, 2025, a super big ice storm, which involved, of course, freezing rain, hit at least the northern third or so of the lower peninsula of Michigan. In that region of the state then was Presque Isle County, and in that county was this house. Both the house and the county still exist today. You are seeing what people see when they first show up at the house in the winter, the north side with a porch and two pole people. The snowman, who is called Snow, was made a few decades ago. I made the skier, who I called Janet. I took the first 25 photographs of this video on April 8, 2025, a couple days after electricity had been returned to the house and nearby houses. This photograph shows the backyard of the house. In essence, because of the storm, Presque Isle County, in relation to telephone service and cable service and internet service, went completely offline for customers for a short while, especially over the first week or so of cleanup, affecting some 32,000 customers. Some months after the storm hit, I would learn that the Presque Isle Electric and Gas Cooperative had to replace some 2,800 telephone poles and some 3,800 miles of electricity line. For a couple decades, I've said that the property of the house has two main blocks of land. There is the yard proper, as I call it, which includes a woods-like place with stored cedar logs, and there are the true woods areas. This photograph shows the backyard, and the photograph was taken by facing north, and the house is off to the right or to the east. You can see here that a tree was on the house because of the storm. By the way, in very early 2023, there was a tree to the right of the now fallen tree, but the now missing tree fell in February 2023, and it had to be taken down and chopped up. You can see that the tree damaged a portion of the eaves of the house, and I note that the eaves area extends out about 2 feet from the house proper, or the concrete block wall. To make it clear, I report that this tree fell basically off to the south or slightly to the southeast. This image shows the tree and the south side of the house, and the photograph was taken by looking east. This shot shows damage to the eaves, especially the ends of the rafters. Fortunately for me, the tree damaged only the eaves area, and it did not damage any roofing over the house proper, such as that over any room inside. Oh, I shot all the photographs in this video, and this image shows the root ball of the fallen tree. The storm caused some branches to hit a 7-foot lighthouse in the backyard, and there was damage to the roof area, or the lantern room area, and the roof area, which had been damaged in the 2023 tree crash and had gotten repaired in the summer of 2023, would get repaired in the middle of the summer of 2025. This photograph presents the south side of the house, showing what the house looked like to a person looking to the west while standing in the front yard. This photograph is the first of 5 that show the front of the house, and you are seeing the south end here. In essence, I am sort of panning from south to north while showing the house in still photographs. Under the blue tarp was a steel bench swing-like unit, which was probably 50 or 60 years old at least. The big window structure was the living room window, and the white area to the right was the garage. Now you can see the garage better, the back of it anyway, and you are looking sort of northwest, and the vehicle in the background would be used in the future to move 15-inch long log pieces to another residence. This image shows the east side of the house, and you can see the front yard, and out in the distance was land to the south of the house. To the north of the house was a parking area, and beyond that was a small barn, which was used to store such things as a lawnmower and an Aaron snow throw machine. To the right or so of the barn was this portion of the parking area, and a little ways beyond the orange fence material was Lake Huron. This image shows what was sort of behind the barn on April 8, 2025, and you are looking east. This is another look and the final look at the property on April 8, 2025, and this portion may look like woods, but I call it a part of the yard proper. On April 14, 2025, I took another photograph of the land surrounding the barn, and the snow was gone, so you can better see the area now. This photograph and the next three were taken around the same time that the previous photograph was, and you can see the result of some of the cleanup work that had been done in the front of the house. Here is a look at debris gathered up from the front yard proper and from the low-lying area, like a woods area, to the east of the front yard. Now, the fallen tree in the backyard had the root ball not covered with snow, and you can see parts of several other fallen trees. In April 2025, the root ball was like an ice ball, and it would not be removed till the ice in it was gone. Most of the debris from the storm was transported in this wheelbarrow-like unit or cart in what were like at least 1,000 feet long round trips to a burn pit. And often I pulled this unit and carried tree limbs to the burn pit, and I made about 180 trips. Now it is June 10, 2025, and the work to take down the fallen tree could begin. And by the way, the cedar tree with no bark in the background would be used as part of a scaffolding unit that I was planning to make. This photograph is now lacking 4 fallen trees, most of which were cedar, and while I removed 3 of the trees, they had already been chosen to be made into a scaffolding unit. These are 4 cedar logs on the ground in the parking area, and 3 were fallen trees in the backyard proper, and 1 was from the woods proper, and in the end, 2 would be 9 feet long and 2 would be 11 feet long. This shows 4 4-foot-long pressure-treated 2x4s. All would have angle iron set up on the end soon. The angle iron pieces would be used to grip 2-foot-long 2x4s that would exist on the 2 sides of the scaffolding unit. Here's a close-up of the main 2x4s that were being worked on, and I was making the scaffolding unit so that it could be taken apart quickly and could be moved to another property easily and could be stored easily. This image shows one side of the scaffolding unit. It was bolted together with galvanized bolts and nuts and washers. In total, there were 10 fallen trees in the yard proper and a bunch of other fallen trees on the remainder of the property. This image presents the scaffolding unit without any wheels, and the unit has 2 levels for a person to stand on, and the standing board is a piece of OSB. If you take the cross member off the long way side by removing 2 nuts, you can easily and quickly pop up the 4 4-foot-long 2x4s and end up with the 4 boards and the 2 sides of the scaffolding unit. The scaffolding unit was made on around June 14, 2025, and here it was then with 2 wheels, which I had gotten from a garage sale at a church around the time. The OSB board was not screwed onto anything. It was held in place with straps, and 4 bolts went down through the board to the inner space of the 2x4 rectangle to keep the board from sliding around, forward and backward. No nuts were used. Here the scaffolding unit was ready to use, and at first it would be used to cut up the tree, which would be cut up by a neighbor while I moved logs and debris out of the way. The main cutting tool that was being used was a Stihl MS-261CM, which I had bought in 2023 so that the fallen tree of 2023 could be cut up, and incidentally, I did all the saw servicing during the 2025 tree removal. Here is the first image that shows how the tree was going to be removed, and the image was taken on June 16, 2025. The cutting up job was designed to slice off the top half or so of the tree the long ways to make the tree lighter before any attempt was made to move it. The tree was going to be cut up in roughly 15-inch chunks that could be used in the neighbor's fireplace at his house without any problem. In this image, you can see one chunk was out of the tree trunk, and by the way, notice the big floor jack on the ground behind the neighbor. During the cutting up process, the neighbor sometimes took breaks from cutting to break apart tree trunk pieces into smaller pieces. Actually, the process to take down the tree and move away much of the waste material would only take a few hours. Here is the first look at a person who happens to be the neighbor on the scaffolding unit or stand, and you should notice that one of the 4-foot-long 2x4s of the second level was missing so that the neighbor could cut the tree easier. And you can see that missing board was on the ground in the background. And here is yet another look at the scaffolding unit and the neighbor. I have to report that to cut up the tree, we did not use the second level of the scaffolding unit. Oh, notice the brackets on the side part of the stand, beyond the neighbor, into which the long 2x4s sat. I also report that the scaffolding unit was often resting on cement bricks. Later, I would get some big cement blocks. And I have to make clear that the wheels could be easily removed since they were held on with stainless steel wing nuts. While the neighbor cut, I moved logs in the cart to a vehicle so that they could be moved to the neighbor's wood piles. This photograph shows the neighbor on the roof. If you look closely at the lower left corner of the image, you can see the top of a vertical log, which is going to be used with the floor jack to raise the tree trunk off the roof. I put pieces of log under each side of the break spots so that when the neighbor cut the two main parts of the tree apart, they would not drop down any and would stay in the same positions. Incidentally, the Stihl MS-261CM was fitted with an 18-inch bar, and I had 3 chains, each of which had been sharpened before work started, that could be used with the saw. We found that we did not have to change chains, which had not happened with the down tree of 2023. The 2023 tree had had really hard pine. This photograph shows one end of a cable or line system that would be used to pull the tree off the roof. You should see the line or cable at the right, and in the lower left corner you can see the top of the tree trunk that was being used with the floor jack to lift the tree up. The other end of the line was tied to a standing tree that was to the west of the house. The pulling down line, which involved rope and steel cable, was used with a come-along. Because I was involved in pulling the line while standing west of the house, I could not take a photograph of the tree while it fell, but here it was on the ground soon after falling. I report that while I pulled on the line while the tree was on the house, the neighbor cut the tree on the east side of the base of the trunk near the root ball. This look shows the eaves area with the missing tree now, and in a way the damage to the roof did not look too bad to me then. Here is the other part of the tree, the upper portion. It would be taken down by using, for instance, the floor jack and the pushing up log and the cable system. Once the second part was down, it was just busy work for us, cut and move pieces away. And here were a bunch of wood chunks that would soon be taken away. A bunch of times I loaded up the back of a GMC Terrain with logs and took them to the neighbor's place. This photograph is dated June 17, 2025, and the neighbor no longer was involved with helping in the yard. I now took up the process to remove the root ball, and I had no plans to pull it out. My plan was to dig around the root system and get all the dirt off. All the dirt had to be taken off, or as much as possible, so that I could cut up the root ball with the chainsaw. A lot of dirt on the tree ball could dull the chainsaw chain quickly, so I hosed off the tree ball. Hey, what's this? At times I found that I was being observed. They probably thought they were being sneaky. The group was often made up of Big Boy, Ricky the Beaver, and Soapy the Snowman. It seems they wanted to learn the right way to do things. See the tree to the left? On June 19, 2025, I took this photograph. There was a problem with the tree. If you look closely at this photograph, you will see a crack that runs up the trunk. Here's another look at the crack, and you might think that it does not look too bad, but I now had plans to take down the tree before it might fall. Look at the tree from the south. The photograph hints to me that the tree shifted down a bit recently, since some limbs were now touching the roof area, which they had not been doing some weeks previously. Well, I now get back to the root ball. It was now dry, and I could cut it up. The saw worked out quite well, and it did not take long to cut up the root ball. At this point, the root ball was out of the ground, and there were only pieces of the ball lying around. Here is a close-up look at the hole, and that is the end of that. This photograph was taken at midday on June 20th, 2025, and I was in the process of filling in the hole, but I had heard that rain was on the way, so I ended my work for the day, and I went inside. Tomorrow, the leaning tree would be taken down or pulled down. On July 20th, 2025, later in the day, rain hit, and I was sitting at a computer goofing off, and all of a sudden I heard a crunch. The leaning tree fell. When the rain was about done, I went outside and took photographs of the tree, and this one shows the tree was lying on the roof. You can see the base of the tree was now really crappy, having a bunch of breaks and cracks. Here's a look at the tree on the house, and you're looking sort of to the northeast. Well, here we go again. I had the scaffolding ready. I had the floor jack and a tree trunk for pushing up ready. I had a pole saw ready. Soon the neighbor showed up on this day, June 21st, 2025. The cutting was underway. We had already cut up stuff that was sort of hanging over the roof. You can see the floor jack and the push-up pole in position. We, as we had done recently with the other fallen tree, worked to make the tree lighter, and we found that we did not need to use the scaffolding unit. Basically, I put a piece of OSB under the tree trunk at the eaves, and the neighbor cut the base loose, and then while I was on the roof, I used my legs to push the trunk off the roof and to the ground. All that was left to do was cut up the tree and move the pieces away. Here is a look at the base of the second tree, and it was a base that was highly rotten, so it was not too surprising that the tree had fallen the day before. This photograph of June 24, 2025 shows what the backyard looked like with now 2 missing trees. And here is where the big tree was. The hole was filled in with dirt and covered with grass seed and some sawdust. On August 1st, 2025, I was ready to repair the underneath structure of the eaves, which included the broken rafter ends, or really rafter tails. This was the way the scaffolding unit looked like on August 1st, 2025, and now it had 4 wheels. Some parts were covered with tar and some parts with oil-based primer. And here the scaffolding unit was resting on 4 big cement blocks. And by the way, the white wheels had been bought from a resale shop in Sheboygan, Michigan. The scaffolding unit was easy for one person to move when it had 2 wheels, and was even easier to move with 4 wheels. To get the unit off the wheels, I, as a one-man team, jacked up the unit for a few moments. Then I stuffed the cement blocks under the scaffolding unit and lowered it on the blocks, and since the bottoms of the poles were tarred, I used plastic bags to keep the bottoms from sticking to the blocks, and over time the tar on the bottoms would dry and the bags would no longer be needed. The unit was fairly stable on the wheels, and it was quite stable when on the blocks. To lift up fallen parts of the eaves, I had to use a scissor jack from a car and a 9-foot-long cedar log. The log was loosely tied with rope to the scaffolding unit to prevent the log from falling. Here is the lower end of my tool, the jacking up system, and above there were 6 damaged rafter tails, but I do not show in this video the process to repair all of them. And here is the top of the jacking up system, at least in relation to one of the damaged rafter ends. This image shows a damaged rafter end, and it also shows a 1x6 board that was involved in the roof structure originally. Here was the template that I made based on good rafter tails yet existing up under the roof, and the template did not show how the end of the new splint-like piece would have an extra couple feet of straight wood, which would end up in the attic. This shows another angle of the rafter area, which was known to me as number 1A. I marked the damaged rafter tails from number 0A to number 5A. 3 of them, 2A through 4A, broke off completely during construction. I sometimes used 2 jacks and 2 9-foot-long pieces of cedar trunk to lift up roof parts, and for that type of work, I used the scissor jack and a small floor jack. Here was the top area of a 2-jack system, and I was still working with rafter number 1A. Slowly and carefully, I raised number 1A till the crack came together well enough. Next, I pushed up and in the new rafter splint-like piece. I drilled holes and installed lag screws, the tops of which you can see. This view looks up under the roof, and you can see how the splint-like piece went beyond the sill area, off to the left. This is another view, and you can see farther under the roof past the sill area. This image was taken from the attic. Notice the shape of the splint-like piece. Once again, lag screws were used to secure the new piece to the old rafter. This image shows the next rafter end, or the spot where the next rafter end once was, and I tell you here that the roof boards are 1x12s for this house, which was made in about 1956. I have pulled back the view, and I show the next rafter area, which was number 2A. Instead of using 1x6s for the extra support at the rafter tails, I used 2x4s, and those were held in place with deck hangers and SD connector screws and lag screws. This photograph shows 2 rafter ends that were completed in main form, but each might get a tiny extension piece to make sure each end was then out the proper distance from the wall. For rafter end number 5A, I used a straight piece of new material instead of a full rafter end replacement based on an old end and the template. 3 lag screws were installed on the board in the attic area, which was the best that I could do, since I could not reach the area from within the attic, but the old rafter had not been cracked too much. 3 lag screws were installed on the eaves side of the board, and by the way, this repair structure was also used for rafter end number 0A. This image shows the completed rafter end work, and I had used a really long level to make sure the bottoms were aligned and level. I also made sure the rafter ends stood out at the same distance, about 23 inches and a quarter, and this image shows 2 stop blocks related to 2 rafter ends, which assured the 2 rafter ends were sticking out at the proper distance and lined up with all the other rafter ends. The roof still had holes, but really the damage was not too bad. A person can see that several rows of shingles, covering about 2 feet of distance, under which was ice shield, would have to be replaced. A view of the roof line from the north to the south shows that the roof seemed to be relatively flat, even though some roof planks underneath shingles were damaged. The roof line or the edge of the roof looked good, being pretty straight across. And another view proves the case that the understructure was lined up well. So the big tarp was put back in place, and next in the process to repair the house would be to replace, for one, some shingles. On August 7, 2025, this was how the scaffold looked. It was completely tarred or painted with oil-based primer, and once the tar dried over the next few weeks, the unit would be given top coat paint, latex water-based color paint. Remember, you do not paint tar with oil-based paint. Incidentally, at the start of the production process, I made a schematic of sorts, showing, for instance, the distances between rafter tails related to centers, and it was nothing more than information put on a piece of brown grocery bag. Soon I had the fascia board structure in place, getting help in holding up the 2 boards that were used from the neighbor, and I used deck screws and not nails. It was not till the fascia board structure was in place that I then filled in holes in the plank structure, doing work from underneath. Remember, I was making the structure sound enough to last till the next complete reshingling of the roof would be done, when the planks of the eaves could be made better and neater. Finally, I had the soffit in place, using stainless steel screws to hold the individual pieces in place, screwing into the fascia board. And once soffit stuff was in place, I put on the fascia aluminum, getting help in holding pieces from the neighbor. I take you up top to when some bad materials were already removed through cleanup work, and incidentally, I got so busy doing work sometimes up top that I forgot to take a few additional photographs. I decided not to put down ice shield since I did not want to buy a big new roll to take care of a little spot. Plus I knew the existing shingles were at least 20 years old and a bit brittle, and shingles might crack and break if I were to bend them up a lot. So I decided to use aluminum sheet. I had the stuff in stock. I removed nails that blocked me from pushing the aluminum way up and underneath existing shingles, and I well overlapped pieces of aluminum, and I used sealant from a tube to block water from getting underneath things. I also put sealant on all nail heads, and I spared no spot that I felt should be well sealed. Then came the time to put on the shingles, and every nail put through a shingle would get sealant attention. That is, each nail head would get covered with sealant. Oh, hold on. Notice I gave my scaffold a temporary extra support using a cedar pole and short pieces of rope. I was taking no chances in relation to support and stability. While I did the installing of shingles, I put sealant underneath lips of shingles to make sure the shingles would stay down and make sure shingles stayed stuck to other shingles. In the end, this was what I had, and it did not look too bad, and I cared not that the color was slightly off in relation to new shingles and old shingles. And a look down the line of the roof edge showed that the shingling job did not stick out like a sore thumb. A person on the ground who looked at the roof or glanced at the roof would not be put aback by what was showing. So this is what the backyard turned into, minus 2 trees and minus the damage to the roof of the house. Here was now the front side of the house with the fall leaves out, and leaves had already started to fall, and soon I would blow off the roof, not worried I would blow off any new shingles. This view shows the south side of the house, which lacked the tree that was lying on the roof some months earlier. For me, this scaffold was the star of the event. I used both levels, and it worked out well. My not having it would have made the job tougher. I did not want to rent a scaffold for weeks or months. A friend of mine offered to lend me one, but I would have had it for weeks and weeks, and that could have put the friend in a bind maybe, not having it easily available. One person can set up this unit and take it down. For the first takedown time, I used 2 ladders to hold up the sides while I took it apart. Oh, notice the black tape strips. Those are to help another person set up the unit, matching the color and number of strips. The unit has green tape on the lower level and black tape on the upper level. You can see the tape strips on the 4-footers. The log is the removable cross member for the back, and you can see the OSB based board that is used for standing on. And this is a rubber mallet. Is that something new to you? I used it to knock up and out the 4-footers, given they were a little stuck in with paint. These are the permanent 2 sides that could now be stowed away, and I will show that idea in a moment. I have to report that I set up the cleanup and repair sequence so that I would do all the work up to the time that the shingling job needed to be done. I knew it might be hard to get someone to quickly come to repair the house, given I was in a rural area, and in the area there had been a lot of damage because of the ice storm. And I had this in mind. I heard that up north it is commonplace for repair guys to do bad work or not show up or delay doing work, such as because they are lazy. In August 2025, I emailed a team to come to fix the shingles, and the guys showed up the next day, and then they never showed up again, and they did not do the job, and they never returned my additional contacts. Another construction group never answered my request for help, even to be courteous by saying the group cannot handle the job being busy. Another group that I visited did not know what Eternabond was, so I canceled the idea of even having that group around. I took it upon myself to do the shingling. In the last 2 photographs, you saw the result of work that the homeowner and I did a little over 15 years ago, repairing jackass work that had been done when I was not involved with the house. Years ago, at the edge of the flat roof, which was being covered with rubber sheet, a construction group put down strips of rubber at the edges and secured that strip material with sealant or more likely caulking. It was crap work. I discovered that the stuff was coming loose. The homeowner, a woman of about 75 years of age, and I got on the roof, ripped up all the rotten stuff, cleaned up the old caulking, and secured the rubber sheet material with Eternabond, which is like flex tape, though better. See the darker rubber-like stuff on the roof? That is really sticky stuff which comes in rolls, and it has done well over the years. If you are a young guy who is not a jackass and can learn well what products are in the marketplace of the country to repair roofs, and can do good work and can be honorable, you could do well doing roofing in Upper Michigan for decades, and you could knock a bunch of jackasses out of jobs easily. And here is how I stored the scaffold for the first time, secure for now under the blue tarp that had been used on the roof. After that, here were Big Boy and Soapy, and they were ready for winter and well aware the house was ready for the winter weather. If they would have helped me clean up things and fix the house, they probably would have been more help than many of the guys up north, it seems. And I know Soapy and Big Boy would probably have been more like men than boys. They would never do sloppy caulking work, for example, such as like that had been done on the house a little before I became involved with the house. When I became involved with the house, I had to scrape off dozens and dozens and dozens of feet of caulk on the back side of the house and had to redo caulking, making it so that there were no holes between two surfaces and making sure the caulking was smooth, as done with the wet finger technique. In rural areas, you can end up with stupid because stupid teaches stupid over the years and generations. And for instance, it can end up that the construction guys can only know what is available by being exposed to stores with staffers who have limited knowledge of what is out in the total marketplace. And construction guys can be too lazy to do research to solve problems and learn beyond the simple. And it is possible for such guys to never learn to be real problem solvers. It's just the way it is. Yes, with big smiles, Big Boy and Soapy could relax and look out over Lake Huron, which soon would be covered with a lot of ice and snow for another winter season.